Vrindavan with the children.
In Vrindavan with the children.
In Vrindavan with the children.
Oh, Radhe Radhe we will sing, Sham Sham we will sing.
Radhe Radhe we will sing, Sham Sham we will sing.
Radhe Radhe गाएंगे, Sham Sham गाएंगे.
Radhe Radhe गाएंगे, Sham Sham गाएंगे.
Shri Radhe Shri Sham.
राधे
Shri Radhe Shri Sham.
हरि बोल
Shri Radhe Shri Sham. Shri Radhe Shri Sham.
Shri Radhe Shri Sham. Shri Radhe Shri Sham.
Jai Radhe Shri Sham. Jai Radhe Shri Sham.
Radhe Radhe Sham Sham.
Radhe Radhe Sham Sham.
Radhe Radhe Sham Sham.
Radhe Radhe Sham Sham.
Oh Radhe Radhe Sham Sham.
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 वृंदावन में
Radhe Radhe.
गोवर्धन में
Radhe Radhe.
श्यामा कुंज में
Radhe Radhe.
राधा कुंज में
Radhe Radhe.
धोबन में
Radhe Radhe.
सेवा कुंज में
Radhe Radhe.
राधे राधे
Radhe Radhe.
जय राधे राधे
Radhe Radhe.
राधे राधे
Radhe Radhe.
जय राधे राधे
Radhe Radhe.
राधे राधे
Radhe Radhe.
राधे राधे
Radhe Radhe.
राधे राधे
Radhe Radhe.
राधे 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 जय जय श्री राधे श्याम
Sitaram, imagine a world where negative emotions have no power over us, where they have no effect on our actions and thoughts. Devotees, we can create such a world for ourselves by learning to think positively. Positive thinking is an attitude of looking at the brighter side of things. It enables you to hope for favorable results from the worst conditions. Everyone faces problems in life, but with a positive outlook, you can remain optimistic. When you expect the best out of life, you do not dwell on bad things and thus bypass all negativity. The most successful people throughout history had the common trait of recognizing the power of positive thinking. Mahatma Gandhi once said, "Keep your thoughts positive, for they become your words. Keep your words positive, for they become your behavior. Keep your behavior positive, for they become your habits. Keep your habits positive, for they become your values. And keep your values positive, for they become your destiny."
Many years ago, two salesmen were sent by a British shoe manufacturer to Africa to investigate and report back on market potentials. The first salesman reported back, "There is no potential here. Nobody wears shoes." Devotees, what kind of thinking is this? Anyways, the second salesman reported back, "There is massive potential here. Nobody wears shoes." Do you see the difference between positive thinking and negative thinking? Both of them had the same opportunity in the same environment, but the first salesman, being a negative thinker, saw no hope in selling shoes, as no one wore shoes. However, the second salesman saw an opening for development, as no one wore shoes. And it was an ideal chance for us to market shoes, and this opportunity existed only because he was a positive thinker.
Positive thinking is a simple premise, but its results are phenomenal. By making yourself an "I can do it" person, it enhances your confidence and adds to your positive self-image. With this positive mindset, you will never give up trying. Temporary setbacks won't let you down for long. You will bounce back on your feet at the first opportunity. Positive thinking is thus powerful.
You see, friends, negative thinking creates doubts and fears in your mind and prevents you from accepting challenges in life. Just like the first salesman's report. When you have negative thoughts, fear of failure clouds your confidence and shifts your focus from what you are capable of doing, to what you are unable to achieve. Positive thinking thus involves turning off all the negative thoughts and replacing them with opportunist ones.
I agree. Start each day in a positive manner. Maintain a positive frame of mind and let go of negative thinking. This is the strategy that you will need to pave your path to success. Devotees, I will leave you with this. Forget about all the reasons why something may not work. You only need one good reason why it will.
Jai Shri Ram.
ब्रह्ममुरारिसुरार्चितलिङ्गं निर्मलवासितशोभितलिङ्गं जन्मजदुःखविनाशनलिङ्गं प्रणमामि सदा शिवलिङ्गं प्रणमामि सदा शिवलिङ्गं देवमुनिप्रवरार्चितलिङ्गं कामदहं करुणाकरलिङ्गं
Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya,
Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya,
Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya,
Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya. Sarvasubandhi Sulephitalingam, Buddhivivardhanakaranalingam, Sarvasurasurabandhitalingam, Pranamami Sada Shivalingam, Pranamami Sada Shivalingam, Janakamahamani Bhushitalingam, Shobhitalingam, Dakshasuyagyavinashanalingam, Pranamami Sada Shivalingam, Pranamami Sada Shivalingam.
Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya,
Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya,
Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya,
Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya. Kumkuma Chandana Lephitalingam, Pankajahara Sushobhitalingam, Vanchita Pamba Vinashitalingam, Pranamami Sada Shivalingam, Pranamami Sada Shivalingam, Devaganachita Sevitalingam, Bhave Bhakti Valematalingam, Vinakara Koti Prabhakaralingam, Pranamami Sada Shivalingam, Pranamami Sada Shivalingam.
Om Namah Shivaya,
Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya,
Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya,
Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya. Ashtadaloparivesitalingam, Sarvasamudbhavakaralingam, Ashtadarindravinashinalingam, Pranamami Sada Shivalingam, Pranamami Sada Shivalingam. Suraguru Suravara Pujitalingam, Suravara Pushpa Sadachitelingam, Paraparama Paramatmakalingam, Pranamami Sada Shivalingam, Pranamami Sada Shivalingam.
Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya,
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 Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya, Om
Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya,
Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya,
Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya,
Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya,
Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya,
Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya,
Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya, Om
Namami Sadashivalingam. How sensitive are you? Very. And sometimes of the Man Panditji, even more sensitive. It's true. It's true. It's real. But this morning's conversation, it is about how sensitive we are to life. Because we get so caught up in the mundane and in the ordinary that we have sharpened our response based on the karmindriyas. You know what the karmindriyas are? Karmindriyas are the 5 senses of perception. And we become sensitive to our environment. And I'm saying environment meaning even the people around us, all life around us, that we forget that we are actually part of that life. And therefore, the sensitivity that we sometimes remain stuck within, it is, you've said something and you've hurt my feelings. Or you've done something and I've experienced some discomfort. And that for many individuals around the world remains the extent of their sensitivity to life. This morning, I want to share with you a perspective that life is so much more than we see and that we understand and that we experience as human beings. In a very finite way, in a very minuscule way, I want to tickle your thoughts this morning to remind you the words of Nisargadatta Maharaj. Nisargadatta Maharaj, he walked into the garden one day and he said, Lord, I want to sell whatever knowledge I have, but purchase all the bewilderment that I possibly can. This was a response, this was a statement that he made just by walking in his own garden. He says, Lord, the things that I think that I know, I want to sell that because I realize it's not much of any value. But the things that I don't know, just by looking at nature, let me purchase only bewilderment. Are, how sensitive are you? Do you know that right now, I want you to listen as Ravi Bhai shares the very beautiful sound in the background. What else are you sensitive to? When you close your eyes, are you more sensitive to your environment or less sensitive? When you go out into a busy market or playground or in a sporting arena, are you more sensitive or are you less sensitive? When you sit in quiet meditation or in your silence in your prayer room or wherever you find that tranquil, are you more sensitive or less sensitive? When someone dies, yesterday at around 1:36 p.m. my phone rang and I received a message. Krish, our cousin, well, father's cousin, 53 years old thereabouts, enjoying mangoes. And after a few mangoes, he walked away about 20 feet from his wife and his cousins who were hanging out with him. And he dropped. And in that dropping, it was the last he experienced in this mortal coil. But in talking to those who were observing him, said only in hindsight they recognized that he was doing and saying certain things before. It is almost as though he knew that he was sensitive to something that was about to happen. Have you ever had a dream? Have you ever had a dream where in that dream, you know when you woke up it was a dream, but you know that that dream was not a coincidental dream. You know that that dream was some symptom. I picked up the phone yesterday. The moment I got the news of the passing of Ivan, I called my father and I said, Dad, you heard about this? He said, no. And he related to me a dream that he had. The night before, and 2 nights even prior. And he said, my mother, who is deceased, and my father, who is also deceased, were telling me, I had a dream, but I didn't know what it was. And now it makes sense. I'm giving you something that is recent and very real. And I want you to think about your life, where you have had this sixth sense. Something that has happened, and you're thinking, I knew this. It is almost as though it is, what is it called? Deja vu. It is almost as though you have experienced this. There's familiarity in this. Whether it's a dream or going to a place that you know you have not been to in this lifetime. But when you got there, it is almost as though there's so much familiarity. But you can't explain it with the 5 senses of perception, the karmindriyas. The 5 senses are sight, smell, taste, hearing, and touch. How sensitive are you? And therefore the question that I'm asking you this morning is, really, have you sharpened your sensitivity to life? Can you anticipate the things that are going to happen in your life? 100 years ago, if you went to a house in Chagonas, Auntie Jenny would tell you, in those times, there was a lot of just really colonial houses and cane farms and the little kutiyas that our forefathers would have constructed for themselves. And in that time, if you walked into one of their kutiya and you said, Are bhai aur beheno, I am about to do something for you, and you touched something on the wall, and all of a sudden the room became brightened, possibly they would have gone down and touched your feet and say, wow, you have magical powers, you're a mystic. Today, that magical power, it is called electricity and a light switch. Pandit Krishen walks in this morning and he says, today I would like to share with you a siddhi, a superhuman power that I have. And I want you to understand how difficult this is to do. And Pandit Krishen claps his hands and the light goes off. And then he claps his hands again and the light goes on. And I expect to impress you and you'd say, Baba, you have a clapper, eh? Everybody knows that these devices are very basic technologies. And the point I'm making is, the things that we do not understand, the things that we do not understand yet, we think it is mystical. We think it is magical. We think it is supernatural. But when you sharpen your sensitivity to life, you become so very much in tune with what's going on, not just within you, but what's going on around you. Some say that time is a man-made feature. And therefore, right now, where we are, we have this conversation during Pitra Paksh. In Pitra Paksh, we say that the energy pattern of this planet is different. But we don't explain it from the Garud Puran as the energy pattern is different. We say that it is a time to remember our ancestors, those who would have died. And we make offerings of Tarpan and Pinda, and we perform Gita, Path and Shrad. And we make those offerings. But we do it at the level of the 5 senses. But when you sharpen your sensitivity to life, you would recognize that right now, not only in Pitra Paksh, but right now, and I'm not saying this to scare you, but right now in the dimension, the physical dimension that you are in now, there are things that are happening around you that you are not sensitive to, but coexisting in the same physical plane. Do you believe this or not? There are people today who can look at you, and we've spoken about this before, that I can tell your energy. I'm using my eyes and the naked eyes, and I can see white, or I can see blue, or I can see yellow, or amber, or red. Can you see it? And what I'm sharing with you is, while those who have sharpened their sensitivity to see that energy pattern, you also can do it. All it means, it is that you must prepare yourself. You must sharpen this instrument that is called, this piece of technology that is called me. All it requires is sharpening it. Have you ever noticed what is different about a dog? Okay, he's cute. But a dog has many interesting features. But one of the features that a dog has, it is that, how is the nose? Let's talk about the dog's nose. The dog's nose is always cold, but why is it cold? Is because it is wet. Let the dog kiss you a little bit and you would realize you will get a little saliva, moisture on your face. Why is this? Why did God create the dog so the nose is always moist? Why is it? Look at the dog's breathing pattern. The dog, when the dog inhales and exhales, it is almost as though the nostrils flare. Look at that. Because the interpretation, the sensitivity of the dog's nostrils to the environment. Do you know why? A dog, you and the dog, your dog will be in the same room. And before you know someone is at the door, before you know someone is at the door, the dog already senses. How does the dog sense? It is because that dog has some level of perception that is more heightened than you and I. The moisture on the dog's nose is one feature of God trapping what is around it and causing it to be maximized in intensity through the moisture on the dog's nose. The dog's natural opening of its nostrils, widening, it means, unlike you and I, unless we sikure we nose, you know what they say? Unless we do that, the nose natural inhalation and exhalation, the nose does not flare. But the dog's nostrils will naturally flare because it will give it more intake to ensure it's sensitive to even that which it's smelling. And I'm giving you this example because imagine that your dog could talk to you. You know, Kimberly saying, well, my dog just talked to me, Babs. Right? Imagine your dog can talk. When you go home today, if you have dogs, go and listen to what the dog's saying. The dog is saying to you, look how funny your nose is now. Not wet, and your nose not even expanding when you're breathing. Look how funny your ears is now. My ears, some dogs have flappy ears. You know why the dogs have flappy ears sometimes? Because the flapping of the ears, you didn't know this, it promotes the stimulation of the air in the environment to ensure that it can smell more of what is in the environment. You never knew that. And your dog will look at you and say, look how funny your ears. Look how funny your nose, not even moist unless you have a cold. If you have a cold, the dog would say, ooh, we are so alike. It comes back to how sensitive we are to our environment. There's a German word that is called Umwelt. What is the word called? U-M-V-E-L-T. And Umwelt literally translates to, what is your reality? What is your reality of the people in your life, your husband, your wife? What is your reality of your children? What is your reality of your boss? What is your reality of the neighbors? What is your reality of God? Your understanding of God, for many of us, has been limited to what we have seen, meaning we have read, what we have heard, other people say, testimonies of other people, what we've experienced, where are pulkit ho gaye, even all the hair on your body stands on end. That's the five senses. But when you sharpen your sense of perception, you can sit here and experience a vibration, a connection that you literally cannot explain using words. And Umwelt literally means, and I want to give you this example. There's a scientist by the name of David Eagleman. And David Eagleman is a neurologist. And they're doing cutting edge experiments to test how people respond to the environment. And they have done experiments where they take someone who is congenitally blind, meaning they were born blind. They didn't lose their sight in life. And they were trying to experiment to see, you and I, when we see this curtain, we experience it, right? We can see the curtain, but it is not a curtain. It is just light hitting on this curtain, reflecting and coming to the eye. The retina, which is the back of the eye, gets an inverted image. It processes it. It sends a number of signals to the brain, and then the brain now interprets. Oh, it's about a 7.5 feet curtain tall. It is beige in color. It has some What do you call that on top there? The rings? Not loops. Come on, get to the right curtain language now. What do you call it? Are Jai Ho, ladies. Okay, there are rings or whatever it's called on top there. So the brain interprets what it sees through the eyes. But the scientists have taken it. Children, I want you to listen to this very carefully. That they have taken people who are blind, literally from birth, never seen anything, and they're trying to see if they can stimulate the brain to get the same sensation of this curtain that you see with your eyes. They are biologically blind, but they have given the human being sensations to the back of the head, giving it certain stimulations, and the person who has never seen a color, a figment of light before, they start describing what you would say visually, start describing this curtain. And the point I'm making to you is this morning, it is that individuals, we have a brain, and what the brain processes as sight or hearing, it becomes your Umwelt, your reality. But what you define as your reality can be changed. Today, technology, they are actually installing microchips at the back of the retina, and they're causing people who were congenitally blind to now receive a signal through this microchip and fool the brain. I'm saying fool, but rather recalibrate the brain to interpret those signals, and now the brain thinks it is seeing that which it typically will not see with the eye. What is the brain receiving? When you see, what is the brain receiving? Is it an image? No, it is just receiving electrical impulses. When you hear something, Bhaja Govindam, Bhaja Govindam, what is the brain hearing, interpreting? It is not a sound. The inner eardrum is processing the sound, but what the brain receives is only electrical pulses and signals. And therefore it translates that, oh, what a sweet song. That is what the brain receives. Next slide, please. So when you look, don't get too worried about the slide. This slide just shows you that these are frequencies that show us what the human ear can perceive. We're told that the human ear can perceive sound in the frequency of between 20 hertz and I believe it's 10,000 hertz. I can be off there by somewhat. But it shows you there are many things that are happening around you now. Have you ever heard a mic pass? But before the mic reach in your village, you ain't heard the mic yet, but the dog howling. Why? It is because the dog has sensitivity. It is not that the dog is different. The dog's sense of hearing is picking up frequencies that human beings cannot. I wish I could show you by a pointer, but I don't have a pointer with me. But assuming this is the bandwidth of all sounds that exists in frequency, the human ear, look at my hands. If this is the relative range of sound, human beings can only perceive this much. So what are you hearing? Or let me ask you another way. What is it that is happening around you sound-wise that you are not currently hearing? Next slide, please. The next slide shows us the phenomenon that the eyes experience. And in the very same way, it shows us, if you can follow the pattern on the bottom of the screen, you're seeing red to the left, and you're seeing violet to the right. You're seeing the color spectrum, and you see a little blip in the black line above it. You're seeing a black line, and in the middle of it, it has a little white line. You're seeing it? That little white space on that black bar represents Roy G. Biv. Red, orange, yellow, blue, indigo, violet. It represents those colors that we can see with the eyes. But look at the spectrum of electromagnetic waves, which is light, but light beyond that which we can perceive. Look how much that exists out there in terms of energy, of light, that we totally miss. Today we take it for granted. Turn on the radio bulbs, let's put on an X-ray, or let's do a gamma wave interpretation of the signature around us. Today we have technology to do this. And I'm sharing this with you primarily from this standpoint. Look into the future. We have the ability now to only interpret based on the five senses, that narrow bandwidth of things that exist, but the eyes are only perceiving a little bit. The slide before shows you that all the sounds that are around you, you are only interpreting and experiencing. You're only sensitive to a small bandwidth in there. But if you as a human being can sharpen your sense of perception from the Karm Indriyas to what is known as the Gyan Indriyas. Gyan Indriyas means, some say ESP, extra sense of perception. Some people say you have a Siddhi. Remember the example. 100 years ago, I walked into your great-great-great-grandfather's house and I touched the wall. They would have bowed to my feet thinking, I am a God man because I can make light of touching the wall. Over time, with technology and the human understanding, we realize that that is very basic. And I want you to look into the future because there is a concern for those of you children who are into IT. There's a concern about artificial intelligence. You know what is artificial intelligence? AI? It is where they are concerned that robots will be able to, because they're so smart and so good at processing data, they will eventually take over the world. That's the concern. And as I conclude with my conversation with you this morning, I want to share with you a foresight that was shared by Sadhguru Jagi Vasudev. Sadhguru says, don't worry about the computer and robotics and automation, because they are already better than us when it comes to storing data and analyzing data. If you're worried about in the next 50, 100, 300 years where artificial intelligence is going, what you have to do is don't fight the technology, it's doing its job, but focus on this piece of technology, because that came from here. The iPhone came from here. Everything, the iPad came from here. The iPod came from here. He just says, remember to understand the eye. And he says, once you can sharpen this instrument that is called the eye, all these other features, what I shared with you was just sight and hearing frequencies. But every other sense of perception that the body, every one of you can experience, if you invest in that piece of technology, you become like the one in everybody else's eyes. When you say something, when you see something, not with the eyes, but when you foresee some things, there's a level of clairvoyance, there's a level of mysticism that you can bring, because it's just that others have not explored it, but you have. And if you can do that, you can experience life. The things that ordinary human beings do not experience, you can now have a taste of what it is. So all the explanations of what happens after death, what happens to energy, who is God, what is the different types of energies, scientifically from this human body, you will be able to experience it and possibly have a different explanation from that which has been given to you by your parents and your great-grandparents and your panditjis and your imams and your pastors. Experience it for yourself and you will see. You will be more sensitive. First slide, please. You will become more sensitive to life. And therefore, when you're asked the question, how sensitive are you? It is not an emotional question. It is about how connected you are to and with life. Prem se bolo Shri Vrindavan Bihari Lal ki, Vrindavan Bihari Lal ki. So when you go home, go and check the dog out and ask him, what does he think about you? Satya Sanatan Dharma ki.